Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rocker Dog Podcast, the only podcast that talks to musicians about their canine companions. I'm your host, Tim Dill, because my dog Charlie the Golden Doodle can't work a microphone, and today we have a great conversation with Jess Williamson, who's a solo artist and also one half of the band Planes, and this is her miracle rocker dog.
Yeah, my dog's name is Nana.
Now, is Nana Moonlight? Is Moonlight her last name or middle name?
Well, actually, I'm so glad you asked. So she came with the name Nana. Whenever I tell her origin story, I can get into that. But she showed up with a name, and I kept her name because she knows her name. She's 8 years old. So, but I never got to choose a name for her, and so over the 2 years that I've had her, I have given her a bunch of middle names since I couldn't pick her first name. So would you like to hear her full name?
I would love to.
Okay, her full name right now, it's ever evolving, but right now it's Nana Moonlight Miracle Ocotillo Freedom Walker Williamson.
How do you keep track? Now, should we go through that name? And is there a reason behind each moniker you gave her?
I'd love to. Okay, so Nana, so she came with Nana. Moonlight is because she is the color, her coat is the color of moonlight when there's a full moon.
Okay.
Miracle is because she's a miracle, because of how I found her and everything. Ocotillo because I live part-time in Marfa, Texas, which is in far west Texas, and there's a desert plant out here called an Ocotillo.
Okay.
Freedom because she loves and needs her freedom. Walker because that's my boyfriend's last name, and Williamson because that's my last name.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Now I typically walk through the show kind of working present to past, but in going through your Instagram, I wonder if we get to know Frankie, then we kind of get to know the context of Nana. Is that fair?
I love that you brought up Frankie. Thank you. Yes, that's fair.
Well, I feel like Frankie is such a profound existence in your life.
Yes.
And just reading about it, and you had him, I think, 13 years. I'll let you tell the story, but you had him 13 years, and it was a profound loss, as with any dog.
That's right.
But I think it leads in nicely to what a miracle Nana became to be. So Let's start with Frankie. What's the context around Frankie?
I'm gonna cry. You really
That's okay.
did your research. Thank you. Okay.
I think anyone who listens to this podcast will understand emotions around dogs. So feel free to cry, and we will.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Frankie, first of all, was a girl. It's okay. Common misconception that Frankie was a boy. So Frankie lived to be 14, but I only officially had her for the last 7 years of her life or so, because she belonged to some friends of mine, two really good friends of mine, brothers, kind of had her, and it was sort of like they lived together, but then when they didn't live together, she kind of moved around a lot, kind of whoever had a place that could have a dog or, And so I fell so much in love with her. And one of those brothers was my boyfriend for a time. And so she kind of lived at my house because I had a big yard, and then we broke up. And so he took Frankie, and, it was devastating. It was like a double dose of devastating, like the breakup, but then the dog's gone,
Right.
And then he ended up moving away. And so I got her. And she became fully my dog for the last 7 years or so of her life. And I was just so attached to her, and we were really bonded, and she was so cool. I think part of how those brothers had raised her with a lot of freedom. And so she was really cool and really independent and like a person, and didn't need a leash, and just one of those dogs that was so special. My roommate for a few years, I was living in Austin at the time, she owned a bookstore. And when I would go to work, I was a substitute teacher. So I would be at work all day, and my roommate, Michaela, would take Frankie to the bookstore. And so everybody knew Frankie. I would be walking down the street with this dog, and a car full of girls would drive by and be like, hey, Frankie, like I didn't even know them, you know, like,
Right.
and so she was just this amazing dog. And then, you know, she seemed, even at 14, she seemed so youthful. And so I thought she had a couple years left, but then she developed pancreatitis. She had had like a couple of bouts with it, but like pulled out really quickly. So when it happened, I didn't really think it was a big deal. And I remember, you know, kind of thinking like, oh, she'll be at the vet like overnight and
Right.
have to be on fluids. And then, you know, she'll come out of it like she always does. And I remember the vet being like, you know, she might not make it. And I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like 2 days ago, we were on like a 3-mile hike. Like, it's just fine. You know, I was so not thinking that it was the end. And I was totally assuming that, you know, when the end days come, like I'll have a long period of time where she like
Yeah.
slows down and like I'll be able to take care of her and I'll be able to prepare. And it ended up being that she got pancreatitis again, was in the vet for a couple of days, and it was like this crazy situation where I had to make all of these big decisions really quickly that I just was not prepared to make. Like I was on my way to pick her up thinking she was fine.
Right.
And I lived like an hour away from the vet at that time, and it was like something happened just in that drive where like when I showed up they were like, actually she's not fine, and actually to save her life we have to do a surgery that might not even work. And I was like in so much shock, and I was not prepared to make the decision, you know, but in that moment I was like, then fine, do the surgery, you know.
Yeah.
And so like they do the surgery, and then a couple hours later I go to pick her up from the surgery, and it was just like I remember feeling like we're getting really dark right at the top of your podcast, Tim. I just remember feeling like I didn't even realize what I had said yes to, because then I go and I see her and she's got a huge scar with staples and she's on like all these fluids and all this, and I was just like, what have I done?
Right.
Like I just like let them just like do, you know, and then it, you know, and then she didn't make it. It was like this thing where it was almost like they were keeping her on life support, and I regretted even doing the surgery. And then it was just like, you know, she's not gonna make it. And I fortunately was able to have an incredibly beautiful burial for her, and
Mm-hmm.
that was really special, on my boyfriend at the time's land. And we had like a few really close friends, and it was a really beautiful send off. But yeah, it was this horrible thing. So sorry to just immediately get dark
No.
with Frankie's
Well,
death story at the top of the show. But it was crazy because I wasn't prepared, you know? It was like it all happened so fast.
yeah. Well, did you lean on, it's funny, as you were telling that story, I was thinking you were all alone with decision making, but did you lean on your boyfriend or
He
your
was out of
parents, or
town. He was
like,
out of town.
was there
That's what
anybody
was
to
so
consult, or
crazy.
what should I do?
Yeah, I mean, so my boyfriend was out of town. The timing was so insane. My parents, you know, don't and didn't live in the same place as me. So I was like on the phone with them a little bit, but it was this crazy thing where it was like happening so fast. And when I went to the vet and they were like, you need to decide about this surgery, I called my best friend, Carrie, who was in Austin at the time, and she came. And we both like sat there together for a while, like with Frankie. And Carrie was like, basically, Carrie and my mom were both like, just do the surgery. Like
Right.
if you're choosing between let her go right now or there's a glimmer of hope, do the glimmer of hope, you
Yeah.
know? And so I went with the glimmer of hope, which I think I probably would not have done anything differently, because I just loved her so much. And it just seemed like, well, if there's any chance, like I want to give her that chance.
Right. And as you explained, she was so full of life that, days
Yeah.
earlier, hiking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I hate to ask, but was there, there's such a huge expense sometimes that I'm not going to ask if that factored in your decision, but was there a huge expense that you were then kind of saddled with as a young woman?
Yeah.
No one wants, no one wants that, but that's a reality of owning a pet.
I know. I know that is the reality of owning a pet. And yes, it was extremely expensive, you know, and it sucks that that for, I think a lot of us, we have to make hard decisions in the care for our animals because of the expense, and
Mhm.
sometimes not do the thing that could save them. And I'm really glad that I was able to, for sure, to at least try.
Yeah. Well, you said that you'll spend the rest of your life trying to find another dog like her, which at the time,
Oh
which
my
at the time, I think that's 2016.
god.
I can totally
Mm.
relate to. I'm sure everyone can relate to that. She's irreplaceable, and she is irreplaceable on a certain level. But I think that
Yeah.
leads up to you actually finding Nana in the
Yes,
middle
the
in the middle of
miracle of
nowhere.
Nana. Okay, so yes, so what happened was Frankie's gone. I was like, well, that's it. I'll never love again, like kind
Exactly.
of thing. And for a couple of years, I just really wasn't ready for another dog. I needed to like grieve the loss of Frankie, and like also in this weird way, like Frankie really didn't like other dogs. So in this way, I almost didn't want to like betray her by immediately like getting another dog. Like, and I had really high standards. It was like the next dog has to be Frankie level, or like I'm not interested.
Mhm.
And Frankie was so one of a kind. And so then by the time I was finally like ready for another dog, it was deep COVID era. And Los Angeles at that time, all of the pounds were closed. Like you couldn't just go like walk around the pound. And so everything was online. Like all of the rescues and like animal shelters, everything was just online. And it was incredibly difficult and incredibly competitive to try to adopt a dog at that time because so many people were getting dogs. And I just, I was like looking a lot, but I finally was just like, this is not going to work for me. Like, this isn't, there were a couple that looked cute, but it's almost like you had to commit before you even met the dog, just with
Right.
how kind of crazy it was at that time. And I, knew that I needed to vibe with the dog because I was coming off of the Frankie era. And so for like a year, I was saying, I'm probably just going to find my next dog on the side of the road in New Mexico or something. Like I said that to so many people because I knew like this rescue thing, the online thing, like for example, I don't even have a fenced in yard. Like my house probably wouldn't even pass the rescue people's like strict,
Right. Right.
whatever. And so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like find my next dog on the side of the road in New Mexico or something. And there I was, January 2nd, 2021. And I was driving from my mom's house in Dallas after the holidays to back to LA. And that drive on I-40 puts you driving across New Mexico for basically like a whole day.
Mhm.
And I kind of realized that like halfway through the drive. And I was like, oh, I'm driving through New Mexico all day. What if I find my dog today? And I was listening to Scott Walker, whose music, like, it was like one of those drives where I was like, I'm gonna like dive into Scott Walker today because I always like what I hear, but I've never really sat with his catalog. And I was listening to that song Duchess, and I love that song. And I even thought, I was like, what if I find a dog today and I name the dog Duchess after this Scott Walker song? Like literally, like that's what I was thinking. And so I'm like pulling into Gallup, New Mexico, and I'm like a couple miles outside of the town. But it's starting to go from like super desert to like there's a gas station and there's like a little restaurant, or it's like starting to you realize you're like getting into like a town. And I saw a tail out of the corner of my eye. I should say, I also told myself at this point, if there is a dog on the side of the road in New Mexico, that is my dog, regardless of size, breed, personality, whatever. Like I was
Right.
like, it is no longer about finding a Frankie level dog. It is now like the universe is going to put a dog in front of me. That is my dog, whatever the dog is, if it's on the side of the road in New Mexico. So I see the tail and I'm like, dog, side of the road, New Mexico, I got to turn around. And so I exit and I turn around, but it's one of those situations where like it's really far to exit. Like
so-
some of these, you know what I mean? Where it's like so far. Where
Yeah.
by the time I get back to where I was, it was like 10 minutes. And I'm like creeping along the access road, like looking for this dog. There's no dog. And I'm like, I'm so like desperate for a dog. This is so sad. Like the dog is gone. Like I just wasted my time. I got places to be. I had a hotel that I was really excited about in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I was going to stay because I had a hot tub. And I was like, I got to get back on the road. This is such a waste of time. So I get back on the highway. And as soon as I get on the highway, I see Nana on the actual like median of the highway now. Like,
Oh my
whereas
gosh.
before she was like on the access road, which was kind of down like a grassy hill. Now it's like she went up the hill and she's actually like running along the road, like the actual highway. So I like pull over and I jump out of the car and she just like trots right up to me. And I opened the car door and that kind of scared her. And so I just bent down and picked her up and I threw her in the car. And she's just sitting in my car looking at me, smiling. And she's like covered in mats, you know, like her hair, like
Right.
she's not in
She's
great
been
shape.
out a
Like her
while.
nose is messed up. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a dog in my car. Like, this is my dog. And then I realized she had a collar and she had a name tag that said Nana and it had a phone number and had an address. So I was like, oh my God, it's someone's dog, you know? And like, I'm obviously not going to steal a dog. Like I need to bring this dog home. But I did notice that she was in really bad shape and she was running along the interstate. So I'm like, you know, I'm gonna bring this dog home, but if it seems like a weird situation, I had like $100 in cash, and I was thinking I'll offer them like $100 to take the dog, you know, like because this dog is clearly not being cared for, you know. But if I show up and there's like some excited child, I'm obviously not gonna like take somebody's dog. So I call and I text the phone number a bunch of times, no response. And I'm texting being like, I have your dog, Nana. I'm on the highway. Like, and I can see the texts are going through, but no response. So I typed the address into Google Maps and it's only like a 15-minute drive. So I'm like, I guess I'll just drive to the house, So I start driving and I end up going like deep into the desert. Like I have a Subaru Outback. I have like a 4-wheel drive vehicle that if I didn't have that car, like I couldn't even have driven on some of these roads, like going up like these hills and like.
Is this
and
midday
I end up
also?
on this.
Do you have the benefit of
Yeah,
daylight?
it's like the middle of the day.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was a Navajo reservation. And there were dogs everywhere, like so many cool dogs everywhere, like packs of dogs, like running around, like piles of puppies, like, and it was so funny, like coming from LA where everyone's like fighting over like one dog. I'm like, y'all need to come out here. There's like like dogs everywhere. And so I finally find the house and there's like 5 dogs there outside, and I let Nana out and she immediately like runs over to this water, and this kid comes out of the house and he's like probably like 19 or 20. We like talk and he tells me that Nana is his cousin's dog, that they don't want her, that the cousin had left her with them like a year and a half prior, and that his grandma had taken her to the highway that day to get rid of her. And he was like, so if you want her, you should take her.
Did he elaborate? Was she going to the highway and to wave somebody down and get rid of her, or offer her up with a sign, or was she literally getting rid of her like you're on your own?
I don't know. Like so Kyle, Bill, and I became Facebook friends, and like I later messaged him and asked, like, what did your grandma want to happen to Nana? Like what, like, and he was like, I don't really know. My grandma doesn't really like dogs. Like I don't really know how to explain it. So I was like, okay, Kyle, Bill, thank you. We'll be on our way. And then I took Nana. And on some level, it really felt like Frankie sent Nana.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It was a lot of it was very spiritual. I mean, are you a spiritual person?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Definitely. And so it all, just the timing of everything and how Nana truly is a miraculous Frankie level dog. It's crazy. They're so similar. Nana doesn't eat a leash. She's like a person. She goes everywhere with me and just sits there and like is perfect. It's just crazy.
What was it like, the first couple of days or weeks?
She was scared at first. She was really scared. Like she was scared to be in the hotel, and she was scared even when we got to LA. She was scared walking down the street, like with cars going by. It was a friend of mine's birthday the next day, and I took her. It was like 5 people hanging out in a backyard, and I took her, and she just like hid behind my chair the whole time. The first couple weeks she was really scared. Even like I tried to take her on a hike because I thought she's used to running around the desert all the time. I took her on a hike and she like didn't even want to walk. Like she just wanted to turn around. She really liked the car. I think the car felt safe to her.
Right.
But it took a while, but then she really opened up after probably like 2 or 3 weeks. But she was scared at first of kind of everything.
Okay. She looks a lot like a golden, but there's certain aspects of her that don't, like her size, and maybe her hair doesn't get as long. So I'm assuming she's kind of a golden mutt, especially given where she came from.
I did the DNA test like the first week that I had her because I was so curious. And it came back with half miniature poodle, Cocker Spaniel, and Australian cattle dog, and a tiny amount of Akita.
And before I forget, what was Frankie? I couldn't pinpoint her
Frankie
either.
was, I also did a DNA test, Akita and Australian cattle dog.
Okay. I was thinking.
So they have some of the same.
Yeah, I could see the cattle dog aspect in her. Interesting. So let's see, now that, Nana's in your life, you're a touring musician. Does she go on tour with you at all? Does she take short tours? Does she go on long tours? Does she stay at home?
Well, she's never been on tour with me. I would like to bring her. I think if I do in the future, if I do a bus tour, I think she would do good on a bus. But the thing is, where I live in LA, I live in a little back house, and my landlord lives in the front, and she actually runs a doggy daycare out of her backyard and out of her house, and she loves Nana. So typically when I'm on tour, Nana stays there, and she loves it because it's like the same general zone. She knows all the dogs. She loves my landlord. So Nana kind of gets to stay at home when I'm gone, which is nice. But I do want to try to bring her on a bus someday, because I think that like she wouldn't do well in a van all day, but like the bus would kind of become like her little house, and then she would just be like chilling with me during the day. I think it'd be kind of fun.
Now, I assume that you are a pet every dog kind of person.
Kind of, but the thing is, it's funny, like Frankie and Nana both not that into other dogs. Nana, like she doesn't want to play with other dogs. She doesn't really want other dogs like in her face. She kind of just wants to like chill and like peacefully ignore each other. And so because of that, because I'm usually with Nana, I don't really approach other dogs,
Okay.
But when I'm alone, yeah, definitely. I love dogs. And I don't view a dog as like an accessory to my life. Like I view my role differently. Like it's as a guardian and as like a steward and a helper, to take in an animal that needs help, like Nana was homeless on the highway, or like these dogs out here in West Texas by the border and stuff. Like they're amazing dogs.
Yeah. In saying you're a steward, a guardian, and a helper, to you, the dog also reciprocates that.
Yeah.
That they are a guardian to you, a helper to you.
Totally. Like I really don't like the word owner. Like I don't own Nana. I didn't own Frankie. I really like the term guardian. And then I think it is a really reciprocal relationship in that way. You become a pack together, and you have your roles within the pack. And Nana guards me. She protects me. She's a companion, she, especially like I travel a lot alone. Like she absolutely protects me. Mm-hmm. It's cool. And I think she really knows that that's her job. It's very cool.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wind down each show with what I call the Zoomies, and that's 5 rapid fire is a joke, but 5 quick questions. So let's go there.
Oh my God. Question, okay. I'm nervous.
They're easy and mostly frivolous. First question is, do you kiss your dog on the mouth?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like a common thing, but like I don't not. you know?
Okay. Okay. Question 2 is, has she licked anyone famous? And when I say famous, a fellow musician, someone well-known, someone who's, out
Oh,
there.
well, one time I was at a cafe by my house in Los Angeles, and Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth walked by and pet Nana.
That's great. I love that. This is the shameless name drop segment of the show. So I like recognizing the name. Question 3 is, if she was to be employed in, the music industry, would she be a fan, a critic, a groupie, or a roadie?
She would be a critic.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
She's kind of moody and judgmental.
Okay.
She kind of is on the outside observing everything and then deciding if it's up to her standards.
Okay, great. Question 4 is, do you have a dog voice? Do you speak to her with, baby talk, high pitch? Do you change your tone? Or
Yes, I think I do. Yes, I do.
And an addendum to that is, do you ever give her a voice? Do you speak for her in a voice that would be how you imagine her to speak?
I'm kind of still working on finding the Nana voice. It's like not super obvious what her voice sounds like yet.
Okay. All right. Last but not least, question 5, is there a charity or dog organization that you just like to let our listeners know about? Give them a prop.
Yes, there's this place in West Texas called the Underground Dog. What they do is there's a lot of shelters out here that are kill shelters, and there's not a lot of rescues out here, especially like in Presidio, Texas, like close to the border. They are people that go there and find these dogs and help them find homes all over the country. And they're called the Underground Dog, and they are accepting donations on their website.
Great. I'll get more information out on the outro. And I love the name, the Underground Dog. It sounds like, Is there anything you'd like to promote while you got a hot mic in front of you?
I have a new album coming out, but it's not going to be announced by the time this podcast airs. But not too long after this podcast airs, you'll be hearing about my new album.
Excellent. So spring sometime. Will there be a tour to follow?
Yes, there will be.
Great. All right. Well, looking forward to it. Well, Jess, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. I love the story. I love the details of the story that I thought I knew a little bit of.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Nana, and thank you for bringing up Frankie. It truly brought tears to my eyes, so thank you so much for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. And I'll, if you pass through Charlotte, I'll look to catch you live.
Okay, awesome.
All right, take care.
All right, bye, Tim. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, Jess Williamson, for sharing your 2 wonderful dogs, Nana and the late, great Frankie, with us. The dog organization Jess chose to put a spotlight on was the Underground Dog, an all-breed, foster-based rescue operating out of West Texas and serving homeless and unwanted dogs along the border from Presidio to Rio Grande Village in Big Bend National Park. The Underground Dog is governed by a board of directors, run by volunteers, and supported entirely by donations and small grants, and receives no municipal funding. For more information on how you can help, please visit theundergrounddog.org. Thanks as always for tuning into the show. The best way for us to grow is by word of mouth, so please tell your fellow dog and music-loving friends about us. Steer them to our Instagram feed at Rocker Dog Podcast, where you can find more information about each of our episodes. We'll be back again next week with another new episode featuring a hard-rocking Swede with a pack of rescues and fosters, so be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss it. All right, it's time to walk the executive producer to this show. So long, everybody.